my only friend. For 10 years, I had lived beneath its shadow, hiding a secret that could ignite a war between gods and wolves alike. My son, our son, slept in the small wooden cabin we called home, his heartbeat steady, his scent pure, untouched by the bloodline that cursed him. But tonight, the wind changed. I could feel it in my bones, the kind of dread that hums beneath your skin before the storm hits. The fire in the hearth flickered as if something unseen had breathed across it. My fingers tightened around the blade in my hand, and the mark on my wrist, the one he left me with, began to burn like fresh iron. He was close. The Alpha King. The man I once loved. The one who had destroyed me. Outside, the forest whispered my name. A branch cracked. Then another. I moved to the door silently, my breath shallow. From the corner of my eye, I saw the small bed, my son curled beneath the furs, his dark hair damp with sweat. Even in sleep, his power pulsed, faint silver light bleeding through his skin, tracing the outline of veins that didn't belong to mortals. I whispered softly, "Stay hidden, my heart, because if they found him, if he found him, the prophecy would awaken." It had been 10 years since I escaped the kingdom. 10 years since the Alpha King had marked me, then cast me into the wild, bleeding and broken. I was supposed to die that night, but I didn't, because the moon goddess doesn't let her cursed ones die easily. A howl split the night. Not a common wolf. No, this was the deep guttural call of an alpha pack on the hunt. My blood froze. I moved to the window, pulling aside the curtain just enough to see them. Shadows moving between the trees, their armor glinting faintly in the moonlight. The royal sigil burned on their chests. They were here for something, or someone. I didn't need to guess which. I turned back toward the sleeping boy, my son, my sin, my salvation. His chest rose and fell in slow rhythm. His small hands clenched as if holding on to dreams too big for his tiny body. "Forgive me," I whispered. Then I reached under the floorboards, pulling out the small satchel I had packed years ago, just in case. Inside lay a dagger, a vial of wolfsbane, and a silver pendant shaped like a crescent moon. I placed the pendant around his neck. It shimmered once, as if recognizing him, then sank softly against his chest. The prophecy's child had been hidden long enough. But destiny has sharp claws, and it was already scratching at our door. A heavy knock shattered the silence. Boom, boom, boom. By order of the Alpha King, a voice thundered. "Open this door." My heart stopped, so he hadn't forgotten me after all. I stepped into the center of the cabin, every instinct screaming to protect my child, even if it meant killing the man who once claimed to love me. The fire flared. My blade gleamed. The scent of pine and blood filled the air. Outside, the soldiers waited. Inside, my past did too. And as I took the first step toward the door, I whispered to the boy I'd die for. "Don't be afraid, my love. No matter what happens next, he must never know who you are." Chapter 2. The return of the king. The door splintered with a single strike. Wood cracked. The firelight trembled, and the past, the one I had buried beneath 10 years of silence, stepped through the smoke. The Alpha King. He was taller than I, remembered, broader. The weight of his crown sat invisible, but heavy on his shoulders. Yet his eyes, God's, those eyes, still burned the same cold silver that had haunted every dream I dared to have. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. For 10 years I'd imagined what I'd say if I ever saw him again, a curse perhaps, or a blade to his throat. But as his gaze swept across the room, over the ashes, over the shadows, I realized something I hadn't expected. He didn't recognize me. "Search the house," he ordered. His voice was low, commanding, the kind that made wolves obey without question. My hand tightened on the dagger behind my back. 3 soldiers entered, sniffing the air, their eyes gleaming with a feral glow. One brushed past me, too close, too bold. My wolf stirred beneath my skin, the power I had locked away for a decade scratching to be free. The king's gaze flicked to me briefly. And for a moment, something flickered in his expression. Recognition? Pain? No, it was gone before I could name it. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice. Gods, how many nights had I both hated and missed that sound? I lifted my chin. "Just a woman trying to survive your wars, your majesty." He studied me. Every inch, and in that pause, I felt his wolf pressing against mine through the silence. An ancient pull that no curse, no distance could erase. My mark burned faintly under the fabric of my sleeve. I prayed he couldn't sense it. One of his men called out from the back room, "Sire, there's a child's scent." My heart slammed against my ribs. The Alpha's head turned sharply. "Bring him out! No!" The word tore from my throat before I could stop it. His eyes locked on mine. For a heartbeat, the air between us pulsed. Power meeting power. His wolf stirred, and mine answered like a storm breaking loose. The soldiers hesitated. "My king?" "Stand down," he growled suddenly. "She's telling the truth." They froze. None dared to question. I didn't understand. Why did he stop them? Why protect me, a stranger, unless... His wolf knew. Deep down, beneath memory and pride and curse, his soul still recognized mine. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You should leave this forest. The border isn't safe anymore. We hunt rebels. So that's what he thought I was now." "I'll keep that in mind," I said coldly. He studied me again, eyes narrowing, as if searching for a ghost he couldn't quite see. Then he turned away, his cloak sweeping over the broken door. The soldiers followed. And just like that, the Alpha King vanished into the night, leaving the scent of iron and smoke behind. When I finally turned back to the bed, my son was awake, eyes wide, shining like moonlight. "Who was that man, Mama?" he whispered, my throat tightened. I crouched beside him, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "No one," I lied. "Just a shadow from a world that doesn't exist anymore." But his eyes, God's, his eyes were the same color as his father's. And I knew then, the world I had run from was coming back for both of us. Chapter 3. The Mark of the Past. Days after his visit passed like whispers through a graveyard, quiet, heavy, and filled with ghosts I couldn't name aloud. The forest no longer felt like home. Every sound and every rustle of leaves made my heart lurch. His scent still clung to the doorway, to the earth itself. The Alpha King had been here, and the bond I thought long buried had begun to stir once more. I didn't want it to. I wanted to forget, but fate has a cruel memory. That night, the mark on my wrist began to ache again, the same scar he'd left when he rejected me 10 years ago. I had thought it dead, the magic faded with time, but as I stared at it under the dim candlelight, I saw it glowing faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat, the same rhythm as his. My wolf shifted uneasily inside me, restless, pacing. "He's remembering," she whispered. I froze. "No, he can't." But she only growled softly in my mind. "The bond never died, Luna. It only slept." I went outside, hoping the cool air would dull the burning. The moon was low, bleeding pale silver over the trees. My breath fogged in the chill as memories clawed their way back. Fragments I had forced myself to bury. His hands around my brother's throat. The blade, the scream that never left my lungs, and his eyes. Silver fire, filled not with rage, but confusion. He hadn't known what he'd done, or had he? "Why did you do it?" I whispered to the darkness. "Why did you kill him?" But only the wind answered, cold and cruel. Behind me, a soft sound, a twig snapping. I turned sharply, dagger ready, but it was only my son, standing in the doorway, his small face pale in the moonlight. "Mama, it hurts," he murmured, pressing his little hand to his chest. I rushed to him. "What hurts?" "My heart," he said weakly. "It beats fast, like someone else's." My blood turned to ice. No, it couldn't be. Inside, I held him close, my hands trembling. His pulse thrummed wild against my palm, the same rhythm as mine, the same rhythm that had awakened in the Alpha King when he saw me. The bond. It wasn't just between me and the king anymore. It was passing to our son. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat beside the window, the dagger on my lap, watching the forest for signs of movement. And when the first light of dawn spilled through the trees, I saw him again, a shadowed figure at the edge of the woods. The Alpha King. He wasn't alone. 2 guards stood behind him, but they stayed back as he stepped closer, stopping where the light met the trees. He didn't speak at first. His gaze just lingered. Heavy, searching, almost desperate. Then softly he said, "Have we met before?" My breath caught. No, I lied, my voice steady even as the mark on my wrist burned brighter. But the way his eyes darkened told me he didn't believe me. He stepped closer, stopping only a few feet away. "Every time I dream I see a face, yours." I said nothing. He went on, voice rougher now. "I see a woman screaming, crying for someone's life. I hear my name, but when I wake I can't remember why." His hand trembled slightly, as if he were fighting something inside himself. "Tell me who you are." My wolf howled in my chest, torn between truth and survival. I forced myself to meet his gaze. "No one that matters to a king." His jaw clenched. "Liar." For a heartbeat the world stilled. The air thickened. 2 wolves, 2 souls, 2 broken halves of a bond that refused to die. Then he turned away sharply, breathing hard. "If you remember something, anything, find me." "I don't need your pity," I snapped. He looked back at me, eyes cold but voice soft. "Then maybe I need yours." When he left I could barely stand. My mark pulsed again, aching like it was alive. And in that pain came a vision. A flash of blood, a crown falling, and my brother's voice whispering. He wasn't the one who killed me. I fell to my knees, gasping, the world spinning. If not the king, then who? Chapter 4. The Healer and the Curse. The summons came at dawn. 2 soldiers arrived at my cabin, their cloaks heavy with frost, their expressions colder than the morning air. They didn't speak much, only handed me a sealed scroll with the royal crest pressed deep into the wax. I didn't need to open it to know who it was from. The scent of iron and pine clung to it. The Alpha King. He wanted me at the palace. He wanted a healer. And fate, it seemed, wanted me to face the man I had sworn never to see again. The journey through the forest was silent. My son stayed hidden, deep within the underground cellar beneath our cabin, where magic cloaked him from prying eyes. Every step I took away from him felt like tearing my heart in half, but I couldn't risk bringing him. Not there, not yet. The king's guards escorted me through the gates of the capital by nightfall. The city had changed, darker, quieter, as if something was slowly draining the life from it. The people whispered as I passed. "The king's dying," they said. "His heart's turning to stone." When I entered the palace, the stench of sickness hit me like a blade. The halls that once gleamed with silver banners were now shrouded in gloom. Candles burned low, their wax forming tears along the stone walls. A court physician met me near the throne room. His face was pale, his voice trembling. "He doesn't let anyone touch him anymore," he said. "He's refused every healer. But when he woke this morning, he called your name." My heart froze. "He remembered?" The physician frowned. He said he didn't know why, only that his wolf whispered it. The throne room doors opened. The king sat slumped against his throne, a shadow of the man I had once known, the man who had broken me. His skin was pale, his breath uneven. Sweat glistened along his brow, and veins of dark magic crawled up his neck like black roots. A curse. Old, powerful, deadly. He looked up when I entered, eyes unfocused. "You came," he rasped. I swallowed the ache in my throat. "Your guards insisted." His lips twitched, the ghost of a smile. "You haven't changed." If only he knew how wrong he was. I approached slowly, my hand glowing faintly as I summoned healing light. The ancient craft passed down from the bloodline he once condemned. The curse recoiled, hissing like smoke, but it didn't retreat. When my fingers brushed his skin, pain seared through me, fire raw and merciless, burning into my veins. I gasped, nearly collapsing, but forced myself to hold on. The curse didn't just cling to him. It knew me. And deep inside his chest, beneath the blackened veins, I felt another pulse. Faint but familiar. The same rhythm as my son's. "No," I whispered. "This can't be." The king's eyes fluttered open. "What is it?" I stepped back, shaking. "Your heart. It's linked to someone else." His brow furrowed. "Who?" I hesitated. My voice cracked when I spoke. "To a child." He tried to rise, but his strength failed him. The pain in his chest surged, and I could feel it, a stabbing echo through my own ribs, like we were tied together by invisible chains. The curse tightened, and his wolf howled in agony. I pressed my hand to his heart again, pushing magic into the darkness. "Hold still!" The shadows fought back, clawing at my skin. The smell of burning filled the air. For a moment, the whole room trembled, and then the curse relented, retreating just enough for him to breathe again. When it was over, I collapsed beside him, trembling, my palms scorched. He caught my wrist weakly. "What did you do?" "I didn't heal you," I whispered. "I only borrowed time." Silence fell, heavy and full of unspoken truths. His gaze softened. "Why does it feel like I've known your touch before?" I forced myself to look away. "Because you have." He frowned, confusion clouding his features. "Tell me who you are." "I'm no one," I said bitterly, pulling my wrist free. "And you're cursed for a reason, my king. Some wounds were meant to be remembered." As I turned to leave, he called after me, voice raw, desperate. "If this curse is bound to a child, find him, save him, before it kills us both." I froze mid-step. He didn't know. He didn't remember that the child he spoke of was ours. And as I walked out into the cold night, tears stinging my eyes, one truth echoed louder than any curse. If the king died, my son would die too. Chapter 5. The Court of Lies. The palace was quieter than before, not peaceful, but watchful. Every corridor whispered. Every servant's glance lingered a little too long. It didn't take long for me to sense it. They knew I didn't belong. And yet every time I passed, they bowed, not to me, but to the rumor that followed in my wake. The king called for her personally. They say she healed him with a single touch. Perhaps she's the reason his heart beats again, but there was one whisper louder than the rest, one that spread like wildfire. The healer has a child, a hidden heir. I tried to ignore it. Tried to focus on the king's recovery, on the faint rhythm that still connected his pulse to my son's. But lies have a way of creeping beneath the skin. And in this palace, truth was always the first thing to die. Each night, I returned to the healer's wing where I stayed under guard. I pretended to rest, but sleep never came. The curse on the king had changed since I touched it. I could feel its echo in my veins, a shadow tugging at my soul. And sometimes, when I closed my eyes, I could hear his voice. Arya. Soft, broken, like a man reaching for a name he had no right to remember. The next morning, I was summoned to the council chamber. A dozen nobles sat around a silver table, their smiles sharp as daggers. The king was there too, pale but upright, his eyes distant. When I entered, their gazes slid to me like snakes. One of them, Lord Dareth, his tone dripping with mock politeness, said, "Your Majesty, is it wise to keep an outsider in such close proximity to you? Some of us find her presence unsettling." I met his eyes calmly. "I didn't come here for comfort." The room shifted, tension crackling like lightning. The king's hand gripped the armrest. "She stays." "But sire," I said. He growled. "She stays." The silence that followed was heavy enough to drown in. Later, when the council dismissed, I lingered behind. The king stood by the tall window, watching the storm clouds gather over the courtyard. "You shouldn't defend me," I said quietly. He didn't turn. "You shouldn't need defending." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us hummed with something I didn't dare name. Then he said softly, "There are whispers about you. About a child." My heart stilled. People say many things. He turned then, eyes sharp, searching. "Is it true?" My throat tightened. I forced the lie out anyway. "No." He studied me for a long time, as if weighing every word I'd ever said. Finally, he murmured, "You're a terrible liar." That night, I wandered the palace alone, needing air. The moonlight filtered through the high windows, and in its glow, the old tapestries seemed to shift. Wolves and crowns, fire and blood. At the end of the corridor, I heard voices. 2 nobles whispering, "The curse is bound to royal blood. If the healer's child carries the same magic, then..." I didn't wait to hear the rest. I turned and walked away, my steps quick, my heart pounding. Someone in this palace knew the truth, and if they found my son before I did something, it would end in blood. The next day, I was called to the king's chamber again. His strength had improved, but his eyes looked hollow, haunted by memories that weren't whole. "When I dream," he said quietly, "I see a child's face. Silver eyes. My wolf calls him mine." My hand trembled. Dreams are only echoes of guilt. He studied me. Then why does my heart ache like it's missing something I never had? I wanted to tell him everything. The truth. The curse. Our son. But one word from his lips, mine, made the mark on my wrist flare painfully. The bond was waking, and so were his memories. When I left his chamber, I noticed the court physician waiting in the hallway. Nervous, pale, his hands shaking. "My lady," he whispered, glancing around. "There's something you need to see. I found it in the king's records. A sealed letter, signed by your brother." I froze. My brother, the one the king had killed. The one I had buried 10 years ago. Chapter 6. The Truth Revealed. The night in the palace bled silver and silence. The torches along the corridor flickered as if whispering secrets of their own. Secrets Arya was finally ready to unearth. For days, she'd been haunted by the rumor she overheard that her son might be the king's heir. The thought gnawed at her, a slow, merciless ache. It couldn't be true. It mustn't be true. And yet, the boy's eyes, the same storm gray as the king's, betrayed her every time she looked at him. Now, that same fear had led her here, to the throne room, cloaked in shadows, while the rest of the castle slept. The king's throne loomed before her, carved from black stone, gilded in gold and blood. Her pulse raced as she ran her hand along the armrest, searching for the hidden seam she had found in her dreams. A whisper from her mate's voice, the one who had died, had led her here. "Look beneath what he rules," the dream voice had said. "The truth lies under his throne." And there, beneath the crest of the royal wolf, she felt it, a loose stone. Arya pried it free. Dust spilled out, and with it, a small folded letter sealed with a crimson wax emblem, the mark of her dead mate. Her breath caught. Hands trembling, she broke the seal. "If you are reading this, then the curse has begun its final turn. The king was never your enemy, Arya. He was the weapon they forged. It was not his hand that killed me. It was his counsel. The wolves who sit beside his throne feed on war. They poisoned his mind, twisted his bond with you, and turned him into the monster you believe he is. Do not hate him, Arya. Save him, or the darkness that took me will take your son next." The words blurred through her tears. For years, she had lived for vengeance. For years, she had cursed the name of the man who ruined everything she loved. And now, The truth ripped that hatred apart. It wasn't the king. It was the council. The same smiling nobles who toasted her return, who whispered about her child in the shadows. The sound of boots echoed behind her. Arya spun, the letter clutched to her chest. The king stood in the doorway, the moonlight cutting across his face, and for once she saw the man, not the monster. "What are you doing here, Arya?" His tone was guarded but soft, a tired confusion in his eyes. Her voice broke. "Finding the truth you were never allowed to know." She stepped closer, handed him the letter. His hands shook as he read it. When his eyes lifted again, they were wide, horrified, human. "They used me," he whispered. "They made me believe you were the traitor, that killing your brother would break the curse. And instead," she said, her voice trembling, "it broke us." The king sank to his knees before her, the same man she had sworn to hate, and whispered the words she never thought she'd hear. "I remember you now." Arya froze. His gaze lifted, wet with tears and awe. "I remember your scent. The way the moon bent around you. The night I marked you as mine." Her heart shattered, because deep down she had waited 10 years to hear those words, and feared them more than death. From the shadows beyond the throne, faint movement stirred. The glint of a dagger, the soft scuff of boots. Arya didn't hesitate. She grabbed his arm, pulling him close. "They're here," she whispered. "The council knows." Chapter 7. The Child of Power. The throne room exploded in chaos. The torches burst into a shower of sparks as shadows lunged from the marble columns, assassins cloaked in black, their eyes reflecting the moonlight like feral beasts. The king moved before Arya could think. His hand shot out, catching the first blade meant for her. The metal sliced through his arm, blood spilling onto the marble floor, dark and gleaming. "Run!" he growled. But Arya didn't move. Her body refused. She had spent 10 years running. From him, from the truth, from her own heart. Not anymore. "I'm not leaving you," she hissed. Then, the sound that shattered everything. A scream. Not hers. Not the king's. Her son's. From the far end of the corridor, a blinding blue light erupted, rippling through the palace walls like a heartbeat made of thunder. The air thickened, crackling with magic so powerful it made the torches bow and the floor quake. "Mother." The boy's voice was filled with fear and fury, and something ancient. Arya turned just in time to see him standing at the threshold, his eyes glowing with the same color as the king's blood. Power coiled around him, wild and unrestrained. The mark of both bloodlines. The assassins froze. Some dropped their weapons, others turned and fled. The king staggered back, clutching his wound, eyes wide. "By the goddess," he whispered. "That power, it's not possible." Arya ran to her son, kneeling as the energy crackled around him. "Listen to me, Cian," she said, gripping his face in her trembling hands. "You have to stop. You'll hurt yourself." "I can't," he gasped. "They were going to kill you." The floor beneath them began to fracture, glowing veins of light spreading like roots through stone. The energy pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. Arya looked at the king, his eyes locked on the boy, stunned. "He's connected to me," the king breathed, "to my curse." Before she could answer, the boy screamed again, a raw, heart-splitting sound, and a wave of power exploded outward. The assassins were thrown across the hall like rag dolls, their bodies striking the walls with sickening thuds. Then silence. Only the ragged sound of breathing filled the air. Smoke curled upward from the cracks in the marble. Arya gathered her son into her arms, his small body trembling violently. "I'm sorry, Mother," he whispered. "I didn't mean to." She stroked his hair, trying to keep her voice steady. You saved us." The king approached slowly, his wound already clotting with the faint shimmer of healing magic. He knelt beside them, his eyes soft but haunted. His power. "It shouldn't exist," he murmured. "It's the magic of life and death itself. The magic of the first wolves. The kind that ended empires." Arya looked up at him, her fear returning. "You think the council knows?" He nodded grimly. "They'll come for him now. That kind of power is too dangerous to live, and too valuable to destroy." Arya tightened her hold around her son. "Then they'll have to go through me first." The king's gaze met hers. For a heartbeat, something unspoken passed between them. The weight of the truth. The bond that neither time nor lies could break. "You're not alone in this anymore," he said softly. "I swear to you, Arya, I'll protect him. I'll protect both of you." But deep in his eyes, she saw it. The flicker of a memory he hadn't spoken yet. The echo of guilt. The truth that still lingered between them, waiting to tear them apart again. And in the shadows above, unseen by both of them, one of the fallen assassins stirred, dragging himself across the floor, clutching a pendant that glowed faintly red. A blood sigil. He pressed it to his lips and whispered, "The boy lives." Far away, in a tower veiled by mist, a voice answered through the pendant's magic, cold, cruel, and amused. "Good. Then bring me the heir." Chapter 8. The Bond reborn, the palace had gone eerily quiet after the attack. Guards whispered through the halls, carrying the bodies of the assassins away, though no one dared to ask who had sent them. Everyone already knew. The council. Arya stood by the king's window, the dawn spilling over the horizon like liquid fire. Her son slept in her bed behind her, his breathing soft but uneven. The power he had unleashed last night had nearly consumed him. She could still smell the faint ozone of his magic in the air. Her hands wouldn't stop trembling. Not from fear, but from what the king had said. "He's tied to my curse." Those words wouldn't leave her mind. What did it mean? How could her son, their son, be bound to something as dark as the ancient wolf's curse that had nearly killed the king? She turned when the door opened. The king entered quietly, wearing dark armor streaked with silver runes. He looked nothing like the ruthless ruler she had once imagined, but rather a man fighting his own ghosts. "You haven't slept," he said softly. "Could you?" She shot back, crossing her arms. "After learning everything you thought you knew was a lie?" He didn't answer. Instead, he walked toward the window, standing beside her. For a moment, they just watched the sunrise. Two enemies sharing the same silence. Finally, he spoke. "When I saw him use that power, I remembered something." Her pulse quickened. "Remembered?" He nodded slowly, as though the memory hurt to touch. "The night your brother died, the night I lost control. I wasn't myself. There was another presence inside me. Something ancient, whispering. I thought it was madness." He met her eyes. "It was the curse. It's been alive all this time, feeding on my guilt." Arya turned away, tears burning her eyes. "And it's connected to my son now, isn't it?" He hesitated. "Yes. The curse chose him, the child born of love and hate both. It's bound to his bloodline." Her voice cracked. "So he's cursed because of us?" The king's expression softened, pain etching across his face. "No, Arya, he's blessed and because of us. The prophecy says only a child born from broken fates can destroy the curse." Arya stared at him, her breath catching. "The prophecy?" He nodded. "It was hidden long before our time. It says, when the wolf of vengeance and the moon of mercy unite, their heir shall burn the curse or be devoured by it." Her stomach twisted. "Burn it or be devoured." She turned to look at her sleeping son, fear stabbing through her heart. "So he either saves us all or dies trying." Before the king could answer, her son stirred, his eyes opening slowly, still glowing faintly blue in the dim light. "Mother?" Arya rushed to his side. "I'm here." The boy looked past her, to the king. "You were in my dream." The king froze. "Your dream?" Cian nodded. "You were trapped in chains, and something dark was whispering your name. It called you its vessel." A chill swept through the room. The king's face went pale. "It knows I'm remembering," he whispered. Arya stood, fury and fear warring in her chest. "Then we fight it. Together." He looked at her, eyes shining with something she hadn't seen in years. Hope. "You'd fight beside me?" he asked softly. Her voice trembled, but her resolve didn't. "For my son. For the truth. And maybe..." She hesitated, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "Maybe for the man you used to be." For the first time, his expression broke, raw emotion flashing through his guarded eyes. "You still believe there's anything left of that man?" She took a breath, stepping closer. "I wouldn't still be standing here if I didn't." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was electric. Old memories flickered between them like sparks. A moonlit dance, a stolen promise, the sound of laughter long buried. The bond neither of them wanted to admit was still there. But before either could speak, the doors burst open. A royal guard stumbled in, blood staining his armor. "Your Majesty, the council. They've declared war." The king's expression hardened instantly. "On who?" The guard swallowed. "On you. They claim you've been corrupted by dark magic. They've taken the capital, and they've sent riders for the boy." Arya's eyes widened. "They're coming for my son." The king turned toward her, his wolf half flashing in his gaze, fierce, protective, unyielding. "No," he said. "They'll have to go through us first." Chapter 9. Betrayal and Blood. The night fell heavy and red. The moon hung over the palace like a bleeding eye, and the air smelled of steel and smoke. The council had made their move. Their armies surrounded the castle before dawn. Wolves loyal to the throne had already been slaughtered in the courtyard. Arya stood at the window, her fingers gripping the cold stone ledge as horns echoed from beyond the walls. "They came faster than we expected," she said quietly. The king stood beside her, already armored, his once silver cloak now dark with soot and blood. "They were always waiting for a reason," he said bitterly, "and my curse gave them one." He turned, his gaze landing on Cian, their son, who sat in the corner, pale but composed, his small hands glowing faintly as he traced symbols in the air. "What's he doing?" the king asked. "Protective wards," Arya replied. "He's stronger than he knows." But she didn't tell him the truth, that every time Cian used his power, it drained him, burned him from within. She had seen it in his eyes, the way the magic left behind silver veins along his skin, marks that hadn't been there before. The king knelt before the boy. "Cian," he said gently, "listen to me. No matter what happens, you stay with your mother. You understand?" Cian lifted his head. His voice trembled, but his eyes were fierce. "You're not leaving us, are you?" The king hesitated, and that silence said everything. Arya's heart twisted. "You can't face them alone," she said sharply. "The council wants you dead. That curse inside you is the reason they'll never stop coming," he finished. His gaze softened as he stood. "But if they think killing me ends this, they're wrong. It ends when we take back the throne." Before Arya could answer, the castle trembled. A deafening roar ripped through the night. Not human, not wolf, something else. The walls cracked. Dust rained down. The king's eyes went wide. "They've summoned it." Arya's blood went cold. "The shadow beast?" He nodded grimly. "The creature bound to the council's will, forged from the blood of every cursed alpha before me. It only answers to darkness." The great hall doors burst open with a thunderous crack. The shadow beast emerged, a monstrous wolf, its fur black as tar, its eyes twin fires of gold. The runes along its chest pulsed like open wounds. The king shifted before Arya could speak, his form blurring into a massive gray wolf. his snarl echoing through the chamber. The two collided with the force of an earthquake. Claws tore through armor, fangs met flesh. The floor splintered beneath them. Arya shielded Kian behind a column, her heart pounding. "Stay here." But the boy's eyes were glowing, brighter than before. "Mother," he whispered, "it's calling to me." She turned sharply. "What is?" "The beast. It wants my power." Arya felt her blood run cold. The curse wasn't just connected to the king. It wanted their son. "No," she hissed, clutching him. "Don't listen to it." The king roared, a sound of agony and defiance, as the shadow beast slammed him into the throne. Blood splattered across the marble, Arya's vision blurred with fury. She grabbed a fallen spear, charging forward. Her wolf flared within her, not shifting, but burning through her veins like fire. She struck the creature's flank, light bursting from the impact. The beast howled, its golden eyes flickering, and in that instant, Kian screamed. His power ignited, a blinding burst of blue light filling the hall. The runes on the beast's body shattered. The darkness recoiled, and for a heartbeat, it faltered. The king, bleeding and broken, forced himself to his feet. He met Arya's gaze. Now! Together, they drove their power, hers from rage, his from redemption, into the creature's chest. The beast howled, disintegrating into ash and light. When the silence finally fell, the king collapsed. Arya rushed to him, catching his head in her lap. "Stay with me," she cried. His breathing was ragged. "You saved me again." He tried to smile, but his voice was weak, just like before. Arya shook her head, tears streaking down her cheeks. "Don't you dare!" But his eyes closed, and then Kian screamed once more. His magic surged out uncontrollably, wrapping around his father's body in tendrils of light. The air filled with whispers, ancient, mournful. The king's wounds began to close. His pulse steadied. He gasped, eyes flying open. The boy collapsed, unconscious. Arya turned to him in horror. "Kian!" The glow faded from his hands. He was breathing, but barely. The king touched her shoulder weakly. "He's given part of his life to me," he said, voice trembling. "He shouldn't have been able to do that." Arya stared at her son, the truth hitting her like a blade to the heart. "He saved you, because he knew you had to finish this." The king's jaw tightened. He looked toward the shattered throne, eyes burning with renewed fire. "Then I will. For him. For you." But outside, the horns of war still blared. The council was coming, and the blood moon was rising. Hook for Chapter 10, The War of Wolves. As the final battle begins, Arya must face the full power of the council, and the darkness within the king himself. The curse will demand its final price, and no one will leave the battlefield unchanged. Chapter 10, The War of Wolves. The blood moon rose like an omen above the valley. Its crimson light drenched the fields, the rivers, and the ruins of what had once been the king's proud palace. Now it was a fortress surrounded by fire. From the eastern ridge, thousands of torches burned. The council's army, wolves twisted by dark magic, and human soldiers bound by greed. Their howls echoed like drums of war. Arya stood on the battlements beside the king, wind tugging at her cloak, the scent of iron and rain thick in the air. The banners below whipped violently, the mark of the royal wolf clashing against the sigil of the council, a serpent devouring its own tail. She looked at him, the man fate had cursed, the father of her son, the Alpha who once broke her heart and was now ready to die for her. "You don't have to face them alone," she said softly. He met her gaze, eyes glowing faintly silver in the moonlight. "I was never meant to face this alone. That was the curse." Arya reached for his hand, calloused, cold, trembling beneath the armor. And for a moment, the world felt still. "I'll fight beside you," she said. "Until the end." A faint smile curved his lips. "Then the end will have to wait." The gates of the fortress trembled. A horn bellowed through the valley, a sound so deep it made the stones beneath them shudder. The enemy had arrived. "Positions!" the king roared, his voice echoing across the walls. The royal wolves shifted, claws scraping stone, fur bristling as they prepared for the charge. But Arya's eyes searched the horizon for one thing: her son. Tian stood at the tower's peak, his small frame silhouetted against the red moon. His hands glowed faintly, the mark of his power still flickering, unstable. He had insisted on helping. Arya had begged him not to. "Mother." His voice echoed faintly in her mind, carried by the bond they shared. "I can feel it coming. The darkness. Stay back," she whispered aloud as if her words could reach him. "Please." Below, the gates burst open. The battlefield erupted into chaos. Wolves met wolves, steel clashed against claw. The air filled with screams, snarls, and the scent of blood. The king shifted mid-leap, his massive wolf form tearing through enemy lines. His fur shimmered with the faint silver of the curse, no longer his weakness, but his weapon. Each movement left trails of light as though moonfire itself fought through him. Arya followed, her own wolf rising in her chest though she stayed in human form, her blade glowing faintly with her son's lingering magic. "Hold the western flank," she shouted to the guards, cutting down 2 attackers in one swift strike. But as the battle raged, something darker stirred beyond the chaos. A figure cloaked in black, standing atop the ridge, raising a staff carved with ancient sigils. "The High Seer," Arya breathed. "She's controlling them." The king turned sharply, blood staining his muzzle. "Go," he ordered. "End her before she reaches the boy." Arya hesitated. "You'll be overrun." "I'll hold them," he said, eyes burning with determination. "Go, Arya!" She ran, through fire, through blood, through the bodies of fallen wolves. Every heartbeat brought her closer to the ridge, and closer to the woman who had started it all. The High Seer turned as Arya approached. Her face was pale as bone, her eyes blind but glowing red. "So," the seer said softly, "the Hidden Queen returns." Arya lifted her blade. "You cursed him. You destroyed my family," the seer smiled, "and gave you destiny." Their clash was instant, steel against spell, light against darkness. The seer's staff crackled with dark energy, but Arya's sword gleamed with moonlight, each strike a reflection of her fury and her love. "You cannot kill the curse," the seer hissed. "It was born from your bond. Then I'll end it the same way it began." Arya snarled. From the tower above, Tian screamed, his voice ringing like thunder. His magic burst into the sky, a column of light shooting through the clouds. The seer froze, horror flashing across her face. "No, the boy's power. He's awakening it fully." Arya's eyes widened. "Kian, stop!" But it was too late. The light spread, flooding the battlefield. Wolves stopped mid-fight, howling in confusion as the magic wrapped around them. The curse inside the king surged violently, his body convulsing mid-shift. Arya dropped to her knees, feeling the energy tear through her chest as if the bond itself was being ripped open. "Mother," Tian's voice cried through the light. "It's inside him. I can pull it out." "Don't," she screamed. "It'll kill you!" But the boy was already glowing brighter than the moon itself. The ground trembled. The seer screamed in terror as the magic consumed her, her body disintegrating into ash. The king fell to his knees, roaring as black smoke poured from his wounds, the curse fighting to survive. Arya stumbled toward him, her body breaking with every step. She reached him just as the darkness burst free, a shadowed wolf of pure rage and pain, the essence of every alpha before him. It lunged at Tian. Arya threw herself between them. The impact was blinding. When the light finally faded, silence fell across the battlefield. The shadow was gone. The seer was gone. The blood moon dimmed to silver. The king crawled toward the fallen figures, Arya and Kian lying motionless at the heart of the scorched earth. "Arya," he whispered, his voice cracking. He touched her face, his hands shaking. Her eyes fluttered open weakly. "It's over," she breathed. But her son lay still beside her. The king's breath caught. "No, no, please." Arya's tears fell silently. "He saved us. He burned the curse." The king's scream tore through the night, a sound of grief and love and fury so powerful it silenced the battlefield. As dawn began to break, the wolves knelt, one by one, heads bowed to the new light. Chapter 11. The Prophecy of Fire. The dawn after the battle came slow, pale light crawling across a land of ruin. The air still smelled of smoke and iron. The once golden banners of the royal wolves hung in tatters, fluttering weakly against the wind. Arya sat beside her son's still form, her hands trembling as she brushed the hair from his forehead. The boy looked asleep, peaceful, untouched by the chaos that had torn the world apart hours ago. But no warmth touched his skin. No heartbeat stirred beneath her palm. The king stood behind her, silent, blood-stained armor glinting faintly beneath the morning sun. His face, once the mask of an unbreakable ruler, now showed only ruin. The weight of his choices, his curse, his love, all carved deep lines into his soul. "I can still feel him," Arya whispered, her voice raw. "His magic. It hasn't faded." The king's gaze drifted to the horizon, where faint embers still burned across the battlefield. "The seer's words," he said slowly. "The curse was born from our bond. What if it ended through it too?" Arya looked up, eyes rimmed red. "You mean..." Before she could finish, the wind shifted, carrying with it a whisper, faint but unmistakable. "Mother! Father!" Arya's breath caught. She turned sharply toward the source. A faint light flickered above the boy's chest, soft, golden, and pulsing like a heartbeat made of flame. "Cian," she breathed. The light grew, and with it came a voice, echoing like a memory carved in air. "The curse is broken, but the fire remains." The king knelt beside her, his hand hovering above their son's chest. "Cian, my boy, one life for another," the voice murmured. "That was always the price. The bond cannot end until one of you releases the other." Arya's eyes widened in horror. No, there must be another way, but deep down she knew. The prophecy had spoken of balance, of fire and moonlight, of curse and cure. And now that balance demanded its final toll. The king closed his eyes. "It should be me." Arya spun toward him. "No, I caused this," he said quietly. "My curse brought death to our child. My sin poisoned everything I touched." Arya shook her head violently. "You were cursed long before that. You fought it. You fought for us. Don't you see? It's not about punishment. It's about love. The curse needs a soul strong enough to carry what's left of him." The ground beneath them began to hum, soft, glowing sigils forming in a circle around Cian's body. The prophecy was awakening, ancient magic stirring like a heartbeat beneath the soil. A voice, neither the boys nor the seers, spoke from the light. One life must burn bright enough to guide the other home. The king met Arya's gaze. "He's still between worlds," he said. "If one of us takes the flame, the other can pull him back." Arya's tears fell silently. "And the one who takes the flame will burn," he finished softly. They stared at each other for a long, agonizing moment. The silence between them said everything words could not. Years of love, loss, betrayal, forgiveness. Finally, Arya smiled through her tears. "You've carried the curse long enough. Let me carry the fire." But before she could touch the light, the king caught her wrist. Firm, gentle. "You gave him life once. Let me do it now." "Don't," she begged. "Please." He leaned forward, pressing his forehead to hers. "I was born for war. You were born to heal. Let me go knowing you'll live to teach him peace." Arya shook her head, sobbing. "I can't lose you again." "You never will," he whispered. "Because wherever the moon shines, I'll be there." Then he turned and placed his hand over their son's heart. The light surged, consuming him in golden fire. His body arched, pain and power colliding, his voice breaking into a roar that shook the earth. The sigils around them flared like molten stars, and for a heartbeat, Arya saw his wolf, vast, majestic, made of flame and moonlight, standing guard over their child. "Father," Cian's faint voice whispered from the light, "I can see you." The king smiled, tears in his eyes, but peace in his soul. "Then live, my son, for both of us." The fire burst outward, a wave of light that swept through the battlefield, cleansing every trace of darkness. The dead were at peace, the cursed freed, the land reborn under the rising sun. When the light faded, the king was gone. Only ash, a faint silver mark burned into the earth, and a whisper in the wind remained. Cian gasped, his eyes fluttering open. Arya caught him in her arms, her sob turning into laughter and tears all at once. "You're alive. My love, you're alive." He looked up at her weakly. "Where's father?" She smiled faintly, though her heart broke anew. "He's with the moon now, watching over us." Cian's eyes shimmered with tears. "Then he's not gone. He's part of the fire." Arya held him close as the first light of morning broke over the valley. Not the blood red of war, but the gold of renewal. Far above them, in the fading mist, a wolf made of light stood upon the ridge, silent, proud, eternal, before dissolving into the rising sun. Chapter 12. The Hidden Queen. The world was burning again. Flames crawled across the palace walls, devouring marble and gold alike. The war that was supposed to end with peace had returned, fiercer, darker, and merciless. Shadows poured from the northern peaks like living smoke, tearing through what was left of the royal guard. The prophecy had spoken of balance, but balance demanded one final act. Arya stood at the center of the chaos, her son clinging to her cloak, eyes wide with terror. The child's power, the same that had once saved their world, now flickered weakly. He was drained, too young to carry the fire alone. And at the heart of the battlefield, rising from the ashes like vengeance reborn, stood the Alpha King. His form glowed faintly with the fire that had taken him before, no longer flesh and bone, but a spirit caught between realms. His voice carried across the ruins, soft yet commanding. "Arya, it's time." She turned, tears streaking her soot-stained face. "No, I won't lose you again." He stepped closer, each movement like wind rippling through smoke. "You won't, not truly." His gaze dropped to Cian. "He needs you, Arya. The world needs you. I was meant to burn so you could rise." But even as he spoke, the shadows behind him began to twist. The real enemy, the one who had cursed them both, finally revealing itself. It wasn't a man or a wolf, but something older. A being born of envy, bound by blood magic. Its voice slithered through the air like poison. "You cannot undo what was written," it hissed. "Two souls bound by fate must die for the fire to fade." Arya raised her hand, and moonlight bloomed from her palm, silver and fierce. "Then take me." The spirit of the king's eyes widened. "Arya, no." She smiled, a soft, sad smile. "You carried the fire. Let me carry the moon." Before he could stop her, she stepped into the circle of flame where light and shadow met. The air trembled as the curse reawakened, drawn to her power. The entity screamed, lunging forward, but she was faster. She reached out, seizing the creature's throat with both hands, her silver light piercing through its darkness. Her voice was calm as the storm raged around her. "You forgot one thing. Queens don't beg the moon for mercy. They become it." The shadows shrieked, the earth split open, and the night itself seemed to fold inward. Her body dissolved into blinding light, a storm of silver fire that swallowed both the curse and herself. Cian fell to his knees, crying out, "Mother." The king's spirit caught the boy before he could follow. "No, my son, look." The flames faded. The darkness vanished. And above them, where the smoke had been, the clouds parted, revealing a sky brighter than any dawn before. A full moon hung there, radiant and alive, its glow shimmering with silver threads that danced across the ruins. From its light came her voice, soft, eternal, echoing in the hearts of every wolf who lifted their head to the sky that night. "The curse is broken. The pack is free. Remember me not in sorrow but in strength." The king's spirit turned toward the heavens. "Arya," her voice whispered back, "you kept your promise, my love. Now keep living through him." Then the light of the king dimmed, his essence merging with the moonlight above, forming a faint ring of fire around it. Together, they became one, fire and moon, alpha and queen, eternal guardians of their people. Tian stood beneath the glow, eyes filled with both grief and awe. The mark on his palm, half flame, half crescent, shimmered faintly. He raised his hand to the sky, whispering, "I'll make you proud, both of you." The wind carried the howl of wolves through the valley, not of mourning, but of renewal. Under the moon's glow, every creature bowed its head, feeling her power, the queen who had hidden herself within the light, watching, guiding, protecting, and from that day on, when the moon rose full and silver over the packlands, the wolves would whisper a single name into the night breeze: Arya, the hidden queen. Her story became legend, her spirit became the moonlight, and her love eternal. Like and subscribe for more interesting stories.